Good evening, everyone. It's Don Holling with the Prep Girls Hoops Network here in Illinois, together for another one of our interview sessions with the team. I have the thrill tonight to meet with Coach Dave Tingley and some of his girls from Paris. Those of you who maybe not be familiar, they had an outstanding season last year that maybe didn't end exactly the way Coach and his girls would have liked, but an outstanding season nonetheless. So with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Coach Tingley and let him talk about last year, introduce the girls that are on with us, and talk about what he's looking for next year. Coach?
Sure. Don, thanks for having us on tonight. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about our team from last year and talk about some returners we've got. First off, tonight we've got Madison Rigdon as a returning junior, Littleton as a returning junior, and Trinity Tingley. She has the same last name as me, so yes, she's my daughter. She'll be returning as a sophomore for us. So we're going to talk a little bit first about last year's season. And as you mentioned, Don, just like most teams, you always ends too soon, which it did for our season this year. We ended up going 34-1 and set a school record for wins. We just kind of got on a roll at the beginning of the season, and played some tough competition at first, and kind of played some teams last year that had some success. And found our way to the Christmas tournament at Charleston, where we were undefeated at the time and knew we were going to see some great teams like Sacred Heart, T-Town there. Ended up getting through that tournament and winning it. And that was without our senior point guard for 3 of those games. So we felt really fortunate at that point and knew that we had something going. And at that point, we just felt like if we stayed healthy and we just, kept working on some small things to tweak here and there, game planning, those sort of things, our season could turn out really well. We played some very tough competition, played T-Town twice, Mater Dei, Sacred Heart, as I said before, Tri-County twice, some really good teams that had some great success in the postseason. I think our record against ranked teams was 8-1 during the season. So we felt really good about, playing good competition at the same time, winning those games and playing well in those games. And that kind of brings me to as why we had a great senior group this year. 3 of those girls had been starting since their sophomore year. Sarah Ice had started about halfway through her freshman year, kind of put her in the starting lineup, and she's been in there ever since. And then Kelsey Crampton started as a junior for us. So we had 4 girls on our team that had a ton of varsity experience. And then Madison started through injury from their prior year, had started almost every game as a freshman. So we had a really good group coming back of girls that had experience. They played together, even played together in junior high at times. So, they gelled really, really well together. And in my opinion, one of the best things about our team is that they genuinely wanted each other to do well. It wasn't about a me mentality. It was everybody really wanting the other person to do their best and be their best. And I think that's one of the reasons why our team was so successful. So with those 4 seniors that we had, just want to talk about each one of them. Kelsey Crampton was our post player, just an extremely intelligent and savvy player, just knows her role. She was our vocal leader in practice and in games. I would a lot of times give messages out during practice through her. I would tell her what I wanted and let her be the one that kind of introduced that to the girls and kind of get things going. I would talk to her before practice and after practice about how I think things went as far as how she needed to communicate with the girls. And one great thing about Kelsey is she went from her role over the course of 2 or 3 years evolved. And she knew as you kind of see as you play, what your role is. The great thing is she accepted it. wholeheartedly. And she knew we had players on the team with Madison, Jenna, Sarah, and Carrington. She knew that they were the ones that needed to be taking the shots and doing most. So I give all the credit in the world to Kelsey for being a role player that knew. I think she averaged maybe 2 shots a game. And as a senior, when you only get to average 2 shots a game, you have to be a special kind of player as far as knowing that it's about your teammates and not about you. And it's about, what's the best way to win this game. So that to me was a huge deal for our team because she knew what she needed to do. Secondly, she was my defense in the post area. She kind of set the tone. She was always in great help position, which is something that a lot of teams don't do well is help. And Kelsey was on the same page as me almost the entire year. And if we weren't, we talked about it. And like that, it was something she would adjust to. We had Carrington Crable. She is a second-team All-Stater. She is a dynamo on the court. In fact, there's times where I asked her, why did you dive on the floor for a loose ball when we're up, 30 points? And it's just her nature. She cannot shut it off. You love that about her. People would love to watch her play because she was 100% intensity all the time. And kind of a girl that has all the tools. But this year with, kind of the way our team was set up, I'd asked her at the beginning of the season, like, hey, your shooting this year is going to be, inside, driving to the basket, taking closer shots. I think she only ended up taking 10 or 12 3-pointers all year long. And the year before, she I think made 20, 25. So when that's the case, when you have a girl that made them from the year before, and then you ask her not to, the great aspect of that is she shot 64% from the field because she did what I asked her to do. She knew that her role on the team that we had was asking for her to take the ball inside. She also is a great hustle player. I think led us in steals with almost 3 a game. A second on the team in rebounding. She can really do it all. If I say, hey, in this game, I need you to work on and do this, she can typically do that. So that was great to have a player on her team like that. Jenna Gates is our point guard from last year. I believe one of the most improved players in the state in the last couple of years because twofold. She really worked on her body and her strength. For her size, she just doesn't look like she's very strong, but she's extremely strong and can really pass the ball and get the ball up the court. She's also really good at handling the ball. You just can't take it away from her. There were many games this year where we were, playing some tough competition and had a lead and we could hold the ball. And not many teams can do that without, confident up when that pressure comes up. But Jenna was extremely balanced and on point when we had the ball in her hands. And the other great thing about her is she's an 80+% free throw shooter. So if they do have to foul, she's going to the free throw line and icing the game that way. So Jenna just set the tone on offense for us. And the other thing that I think is kind of underrated on her at times from people that watch her play is her defense. But I think she's a tremendous on-ball defender. She can get low and stay in front of her opponent and uses her hands really well and kind of keeps them at bay. So I think she's a good defensive player and it's going to translate well into college. And then Sarah Isif was a first-team All-Stater. Her season was kind of like a comeback season, so to speak. The year before, she was injured in the 9th game of the season. And at that time, she was averaging almost 25 points a game, shooting almost 40% from the three-point line, just having a tremendous season. Ended up having a meniscus tear, and it ended her season, unfortunately. And I think that kind of dampened her prospects. At the time, she had a lot of mid-major D1 schools looking at her. And just without playing, and then actually she got into the end of May and was able to do some travel stuff, but obviously still not quite there yet, not able to showcase what she had. And then unfortunately about mid-May, playing in a shootout, doesn't even know what happened, but at some point she hurt her knee again, same thing. But at this point now, we've kind of figured out what it is that was causing that and kind of got it taken care of. And she went through the entire season, injury free. But we did have to really manage her. There were practices where I would pull her off and say, hey, you're done today. There's no reason for you to practice anymore. There were games where we would have liked to have kept her in, but we pulled her out. And early in the season, we managed her minutes and just kept him down when we knew we had leads. But as the season went on, our main rotation, would be in the game. But early on, we managed her. And the great news is she was able to finish the season out there on the court with a few games here or there where she was having some trouble, but overall ended up being a real successful season for her. Obviously, if you're a first-team All-Stater, you're right up there with the best. So the one thing I can say about her is she's grown over the course of her career, and I mean physically grown, and her skill has too. She's almost 6 foot tall with a very long frame. But the great thing about it, she's a shooter. So when she shoots the ball as a 6-footer, she is a killer out there. I tell her that all the time. She's a killer. I mean, when she catches the ball, it's going up and it's going in. So a lot of teams would focus their defense around her. And still with that in mind, she averaged almost 19 points a game for us this year. So it didn't really affect her. And I think she's going to do great at the next level going into college. So those are our seniors from last year that I believe helped us turn this into what I would call a magical season as all but the postseason run. And that kind of brings me to the end of the season. We had beaten T-Town twice during the season and had really good games against them. Unfortunately, we got into a home game in the Sweet 16 sectional championship game and just had a really off shooting night. I mean, that's kind of, and partially because of some defense that they'd put on us. But I think really overall, when I've watched the film back now, we had our chances. We just did a very poor job that night of putting the ball in the basket. And if you were in the gym that night, even our layups, how did that not go in? I mean, it was just one of those nights. And I don't think it was like it was the moment that was too big for us. It wasn't. We'd have been in a lot of moments like that throughout the year. It was just that not our night. And unfortunately, would I trade that game with them with another game in the season early on and not had an undefeated season up to that point? Absolutely. But that's just the way it goes. And that night they were better. And if we're going to lose to somebody, losing to team isn't a bad thing. Hats off to them for executing the game plan that night and winning that game. So we feel like we could have made a deep run. We went and watched the state tournament, and the teams that were there, I feel like we could have competed with, very well. So it is what it is. And I think for our girls returning, it's motivation to know that at any moment, in any game, anything can happen, good or bad. And so I think that kind of feeds into the hunger, and to the need and the want to win and to win in the postseason. Because in my opinion, that's what it's all about. I would trade 34-1 for 24-11 if it was a Final Four appearance, trophy hoisting season. Absolutely. So, but that's not the way our season went. At the same time, 34-1 and a school record in wins is something that these girls can remember, for the rest of their lives. So really happy for them in the season that they had. Want to talk about some returners that we've got, if that's okay with you, Don?
Yep, go right ahead.
Coming in next year, I'm really excited about the season, because you would think with the loss of the players that I just spoke about, you would think it's a season that you're rebuilding. And I'm not saying that you can't call it a rebuild, but the players that we have lying in wait are ones that I feel really confident about already. I know a lot of times as a coach, you're thinking about, well, I haven't seen them in action yet. I haven't seen them when it's crunch time. But the girls that we've got coming up are girls that have had success at every level that they've played at. And they're ballers. I mean, they're girls that want to play basketball. It's on their mind all the time. So I feel really confident about them. And I want to start out talking about Emma Henderson. She's our lone senior returning next year. She's kind of our glue girl. She is the one on the team that if anybody were gonna have a party, it would be Emma, and everybody would want to go, and they would have the time of their life with her. She keeps things real in the locker room for us, fun. Everybody's loose when they're around her, and that's what we love about her. She's just that girl that just kind of keeps things light and free in our practices, especially when I'm in that grumpy mood that the girls will all smile about right now on their faces. They're smiling. And Emma will lighten up the mood and kind of get everybody back on, this still just high school basketball. So we're looking for her to fill some, roles next year, potentially in the post. She's a post player. She's kind of a little undersized, but she practices extremely hard. And when she gets opportunities to play in the game, she's always played very hard for us. So we're going to see what she can do for us next year. Want to talk about Deming Hawkins. She's a sophomore coming back for us. I see a lot of promise in her. She is a post player that stands about 5'6", 5'7", and which seems like, well, how is she a post player? But if you watch her play, she has a motor and a strength. She is very well built. She's a very strong girl and uses it very well and uses her speed. She's actually very quick for her size. And actually, we had her in junior high, my wife did, and she worked with her on her ball handling on a routine basis. And she's pretty good at handling the ball for a post player. She's working on her shooting right now. I've asked her to kind of try to look to extend her range a little bit. But I think she's going to do big things for us next year. And I think that a lot of teams are going to say, where was she at last year? Why did, and it's, unfortunately, we had a lot of players last year that kind of blocked some of that potential youth that we had from getting on the court. But I think Deming's going to come in and be one of those players that people are going to open their eyes to and say, wow, she's a tremendous player. Another one would be Kendra Young. She's one of the girls that plays with length. I think she's one of the most athletic girls we've got, but I need her to use it more, and we talk with her routinely about it. She just needs to play with a higher motor sometimes. She can shoot the ball well, and sometimes that's what we need her to do. There's other times we need her to drive the basketball, and kind of use her size and athleticism to get inside more, especially with the team we have coming back. We're going to need her to do that a little bit more. And one thing about her I will say is she rebounded extremely well for us off the bench in our varsity games. There were games where she came in and only played 10, 12 minutes and had 7 or 8 boards. So we feel, she can do that. She's almost 6 foot tall, long arms, and she can jump. She was a junior high jump medalist. So she has good hops and can get up, and we just need her to realize her full potential. And I think she's somebody next year that people are really going to be impressed with on the court as well. And then we've got some other girls. We've got a couple other post players, Sarah Mills and Katie Knoll. And both of those girls are what I would call kind of role players, defensive specialists. I'm looking. They're long and lanky. They love to rebound. They love to play defense, and they know their role. And so at the JV level last year, they were kind of interchangeable. I'm actually looking for both of those girls to compete next year for playing time on the varsity level, along with Deming as our post players. So they've got to have a chance to have some good competition between them this summer, hopefully, and kind of see what they can do with each other. And then we've got some guards coming back in Kenzie Hutchins and Grace Sullivan and Caitlin Combs, and they are scrappy guards that are not afraid to play defense. If I need somebody to go in and play defense and say, guard that girl, and they're savvy. They're just heady players. They know how to pass the ball. They know how to get in the right spot. They come in off the bench and they're smart. So I'm looking forward to them, competing for some minutes and some time next year also. And then now I want to talk about the girls that are here tonight with me, and kind of give you some highlights of what I think they can do for us going into next season. And I'll start out with Madison. And again, as a 2-year starter, Madison has shown that she belongs at the varsity level and at a high level. Last year, as a freshman, she came in and she was kind of finding her way through, the season, and trying, in my opinion, not to mess up for her friends that were older and seniors and juniors, and not let them down. And that's a lot of pressure for a young player. But I think this past summer when we played, she realized, okay, well, I'm not just playing, beside these girls. I'm playing with them. I'm good enough to help win games, and it's not just about me, kind of being their sidekick, but I might need to be the number one sometimes. And she is somebody we're looking for next year to do that for us. I think Madison could be, our number one offensive player, our go-to girl. She has that ability. I've seen her play in all kinds of different ways. I want her to believe that to be true more than anything else. Because I think she's kind of had to play that sidekick role the past couple of years. Now she might, need to be, the Batman this year and not the Robin. So we're looking forward to her. Defensively this year, though, we had her almost always play the other team's best player. She guarded Sophie Lois from Sacred Heart. She guarded Erin Haupt from Danville, Taylor Berry from Tri-County. And every one of those games, she showed that she is one of the best defenders in the area. She moves her feet extremely well, stays low on defense. She's smart. She doesn't jump at the ball. She's just, I don't know where she necessarily learned how to do it so well, but some girls just have a knack for things. And defensively, she has a knack for knowing her role to guard girls and knowing what needs to be done to keep the other team's best player, struggling to carry their team. So looking for Madison to kind of jump out and be that next year for us that, kind of carries the team offensively and, still is able to maintain that defensive intensity that she brought for us all last year. Caitlin Littleton is the next player I want to talk about. She is lightning in a bottle on the court. She is full of fire and intensity. And I like that about her. When she is kind of in that, like, I'm ready to play and I'm ready to take care of business. You don't hear her say much. You just see the kind of look on her face. She's a tremendous shooter. I believe she went to the Queen of the Hill contest and got second this year for 2A. She shot 37% from the 3-point line this year. But at the same time, she uses that to set up her shot fake and drive. She's very good at turning that corner and putting the ball above her head and showing that shot fake, and then just bang, that first step of hers is very deadly, and she can get right to the basket. And the one thing about her is, as a former gymnastics participant, she can finish with a contorted body. I don't know how she does it, but there's times where I'm like, I don't even know where she had that angle, but she finishes very well. And again, it's one of those things like you would never teach it the way that she does, but she has learned to do something very special, and she is great at finishing in weird angles. And it's something that you really can't teach. And we think that it's very special talent that she has. I'm looking for her to again use her quickness this year. She's super quick. I'm also looking for her to put on some strength and some muscle, and we need her to kind of think about defense this year a little bit more. She's never really had to be that focused on defense, but with the team we have coming back, she's going to have to put herself in some positions to guard some better players from the other team. So that's something that we're looking for her to improve upon next year. And then Trinity Tingley, She hears my comments about what she needs to do on pretty much a daily basis, and she listens. So I've asked her in this off season to really work on her strength and quickness. And I've told her if she's going to be, a point guard at the varsity level, she's going to have to get stronger at her size. She's about 5'4", so just strength. She's got to develop that so she can give a hit and take a hit type of thing. And as far as kind of her qualities, she came in this last year off the bench for us, and there's some games where we needed her to take some shots and to just fill a role and fill a gap, and she was able to do that. She started those 3 games in the holiday tournament when Jenna was out, and did a great job. And Kate, came in off the bench then too, and just through committee, we were able to fill that role. But Trinity was ready to go when I said, "Hey, you're going to start point guard for us." Hit a big shot late in the game against Sacred Heart with no fear, and that's what I love about her. Is she doesn't have any fear of when to take the shot. And I think that her becoming physically stronger is going to be a tremendous thing for her next year, because she's played at a lower level, but playing at the upper level in varsity. She's gained about 5 pounds since the end of the off season, and it's a good way that she's gained. She's really been working on her strength. So we think it's something that she can continue to work on. But next year for her, the biggest thing that I really want her to focus on is just defense, staying in front of people and setting that tone, guarding the ball up the court type of thing. Because these 3 girls that I have in front of me here aren't the most assuming physical specimens. They're smaller girls, but I would take all 3 of them into a fight with me anytime, because they have the heart and the desire to want to win. And I think that that's something special about all 3 of them. So with that being said, I'm really excited about next season. Obviously, going undefeated or having it set in a school record next year is not something that you go into the season thinking. At the same time, I'm excited. I think we can kind of be the team this next year that people are going to be thinking, man, they might not be the greatest team, but I don't want to play them, because they at any time can turn it on and can be that team that can sneak up and get a team that maybe isn't as or they're not as good at. So I'm hoping that through this time in the off season that they're getting better, and they're working on their stuff. And I've talked to a few of them, and I know that they're working. So it's something important in this off season to be working on. So that's kind of that's a wrap on our past season and our upcoming season. So I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Thanks, Coach. I appreciate that. So obviously now we're going to get into talking to the girls. So we'll just kind of start with the first question, and I believe we're starting with Madison. So even though Coach kind of introduced you, I guess girls, as it's your turn, just kind of tell everybody your name and your height, what year you graduate. I know all of you, the answer is going to be pretty consistent, but who you play AAU basketball with, and do you play any other sports, and then just anything else, clubs or anything else that you participate in, either in or out of school, that's important, that will just kind of help everybody get to know who you are. So again, we'll start with you, Madison, if you want to go ahead.
My name is Madison Rigdon. I am a 5'8". I graduate in the class of 2022. I play for Indiana Elite Havoc, and I'm running cross country.
Okay. Anything else inside or outside of school that you're involved in that you would want everybody to know about?
Just cross country, and that's it.
Okay, great. Kate, we'll jump over to you then.
My name is Caitlin Littleton. I am about 5'6". I am graduating in the class of 2022, and I play for Indiana Elite Havoc, and that's about it.
No other great Caitlin stories?
No.
Okay, great. Trinity, how about you?
I'm Trinity Tingley. I'm a freshman at Paris High School. I'm 5'4". I graduate in the class of 2023. I also play on Indiana Elite Havoc, and other than basketball, I run cross country, and I'm also involved in a few different clubs at my school that help around the community.
Okay, awesome. Next question, then we'll go back to Madison again. even though Coach talked about it a little bit, it's always nice for everybody to hear about it kind of through your voice. Tell us a little bit, Madison, about what you think your best skills are, both physically and your basketball skills that make you good at the game of basketball.
Offensively, I'd say I'm kind of an all-around scorer. I can finish inside, but I also have like a deep range on my 3-point shot. And defensively, it's kind of like my number one priority every game. And I like having the challenge of guarding the other team's best player every game. So I'd say defense is definitely my best, the best thing I can do.
Okay. What about physically, as far as, speed, quickness, jumping ability, your long arms, any of that kind of stuff? What do you think physically helps you be good out on the court, especially defensively, since that's something that you're good at? What is it you think that helps you be that way?
I have really long arms and really long legs, so that helps with like quickness, I guess, and like getting an extra step on defense. So.
Okay. Awesome. Caitlin, how about you?
Offensively, I'm pretty fast off the dribble. I can get to the basket pretty easily. I have a pretty deep 3-point shooting range, I guess. I can get up and down the court pretty fast. I'm not very tall, so the speed definitely helps a bit.
Okay. Real quick, I want to just expand on something a little bit for the audience and for me, since we don't get to experience it, but you did. Talk a little bit about that experience of getting all the way and finishing second in the state 3-point shooting contest.
It was definitely a great experience to go through. A little nerve-wracking at times, but I knew once I got out there and just shot how I normally do, I would be fine. I shot 10 out of 15, I think, the first two. And I don't remember the other numbers, but it was definitely a great experience, and it was something to look forward to.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that has to be something neat, especially to go that far, doing it in the regionals, doing it in sectionals. That's a great experience and fun, but getting all the way to Redburn Arena, and when you unfortunately aren't getting a chance to play with your team and being able to be a part of that, I'm sure that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Okay. Move on to Trinity, then talk a little bit about your skills, both physical and basketball skills, Trinity, that you think help make you a good player.
My physical skills, I'm pretty strong for the position I play, and I also have really good speed. I'm a good ball handler. I pass well, and I'm able to create and find good opportunities for my teammates to score. I feel like I'm very intelligent with basketball and understand the game very well. And I feel like I'm very vocal on the court and energetic, and I feel like that's one of my good attributes for basketball.
Awesome. And, I guess that works out pretty well because, first of all, being a point guard, obviously always want to know the game as well as you can. And there's that guy in that other room that shares that same last name of yours that you probably learned a couple things from over the years, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Great. Then we'll go back to Madison. And now we talked about what you do well. Coach has obviously given some ideas of what you guys all should be working on. But again, would like to hear about it from your voice, Madison. What obviously with the scenario that we have, and you're not able to be playing AAU right now, and you're limited on what you can do. But what skills, both again physical and basketball, are you trying to work on the off season to prepare for next year, Madison?
Obviously, I'm always working to improve shooting and dribbling. But some of the biggest improvements I want to make for next season is my speed and my strength, because we're not going to be very big next year, so strength is definitely something that we're all going to need to improve on. Okay,
great. Yeah, I unfortunately did not get the opportunity very many times to watch you guys play. Got to watch a couple of games live on the internet, and then a little bit of film here and there, and just comparing it to another player on the team. I thought when I watched Carrington play, that's one of the things Coach talked about, how much she hustled, and I thought the combination of her hustle and her strength made her play a lot bigger than what she really was. And that's probably something obviously you maybe can kind of model that off of Madison. Okay, moving on to Caitlin. What about you, Caitlin? What both physical and basketball skills do you think that you're trying to improve upon this off season?
definitely what Madison said, strength. I really need to build up some more strength because I will definitely be smaller than most of the girls that are playing. And mainly my defense. I really need to work on like staying on my feet, sliding my feet, and like just like waiting for that extra pass for me to get, I guess.
Sure. Coach talked about that, I guess, obviously because of your situation, especially, with the older players last year, you didn't really come into a situation very often where you had to be that defensive stopper, and he's kind of looking for you to do a little bit more of that this year. Is that kind of a challenge that you're taking on to know that you're going to have to be able to do that and something you want to be able to do next year?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I'm looking forward to and trying to work towards. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Trinity, then I'll pass it over to you again. I know Dad talked about you. You mentioned you feel like you're kind of strong. You mentioned that he's looking for you to try to get a little bit stronger, but talk about what other skills in both physical and basketball that you're trying to focus on this off season.
Yeah, like you said, I need to be like strong for my position because point guard really small. Got to have a good muscle, like good strength. So I've been working on my strength for the past few months, and like my dad said, I've added 5 pounds to my frame. So that's things I need to add on to and keep working towards. I've also been working on my quickness to get like a quicker first step around my defender. I'm also working on dribbling every day to get really good at to get better at like getting by my defender and breaking them down. And I'm also looking to get better at my in and out move and my like crossover and behind the back and open court because I did really well at that last year, but I want to improve it even more than I did last year.
Okay, awesome. That's good information. The next question, obviously, that I had that I sent out to you guys, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about, sort of how you got into the game. Obviously, most kids when they're young, especially in smaller communities, basketball is kind of a popular sport. You find yourself getting into it early and following it all along. But I'd just kind of like to hear how that went for you guys, and also who some of your influences are that you paid attention to when you're younger and even now in your career of who do you kind of see that you see them doing things and you try to pattern your game off of that. So Madison, you want to kind of run through that for us?
So it's kind of funny. I never actually really wanted to play basketball when I was younger, but my parents were about to sign my brother up for rec league, and I just randomly said, why don't you sign me up? I want to play. So like that's kind of when it started, and ever since then I've loved it, and I'm so glad I did it. But some people I look up to are like kind of really specific are like the seniors that we had this year, like Jenna. She's always been someone that I look up to. She's been my best friend, and like she's just someone I want to be when I'm a senior, awesome. I guess.
What are some of the traits about Jenna that it is that you think that you found she makes her most successful that you're trying to emulate?
She's a really good leader, and she has like the way she's improved her game. Like that's how I want to be. I want to improve as much as she has, and she's always had like a really big impact on me and like my game. So it's all around.
Awesome, that's good information. Caitlin, how about you? Talk a little bit about that same stuff, how you kind of got started and who some of your influences have been.
So, like, obviously, kind of what Dave said, I started out with gymnastics in my beginning years, I guess. And my uncle, Sean, he used to be a high school basketball coach. And whenever I was little, he had, like, these basketball camps, and I would go to those. And I started to like basketball then. And my sister played basketball, like, whenever she was little with Dan Gates. And then that's how I met Dan. I went to some of those practices and stuff like that. And that's kind of how I got involved with it. And I've always looked up to basically Jenna, Sarah, and Kelsey because I've played with them since like middle school. So I've always looked up to them. And I've always wanted to be like them and play like them. So I've always basically looked up to them.
Okay, great. Trinity, move on to you with the same question then.
I've been involved in basketball since I was born. I was literally in a gym 3 days after I was born. It's just always been in my life. Um, I've been involved in every camp basketball team I've could be in since I was little. Um, I look up to my sister a lot, Lauren Bogle. She played for my dad in high school at Shiloh, and she went to college to play basketball. So that was a really big step for her, and I really looked up to her after that. And she's just like a really all-around like good player. She's one of the best players I've ever seen like play the game, and she has a really good attitude and like all around like good play for the game and understands it really well. And I've always look up to her for that. And I also looked up to Jenna Gates this year because she's the point guard I had to play under this year. So I worked and watched her a lot this year. When I was on the bench or when I was in practice, I watched her all the time to see the moves she had, what like went through her head. Like I just watched her play, and I really look up to her and my sister.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to throw just a small curveball at you now, ladies. Something I didn't put on the list of questions that I was going to ask, but I believe it'll probably be a fairly easy one for you to answer. But I just want to talk a little bit about your AAU experiences because, as you may or may not know, I've had the opportunity while I've been doing this stuff for Prep Girls Hoops, I've had the opportunity to have many conversations with Coach Gates. And so I'm kind of familiar with what you guys have done. And it seems like you've had a lot of good experiences playing at, playing against high levels of competition. And so I'm just kind of curious to get each one of you, a little input from each one of you, how you think that's helped you, because I think so many girls don't get the opportunity to play as much as they could during the spring and summer outside of the high school team. And even when they do, many of them don't play against good competition. And of course, don't get the opportunity to travel and bond with other players and go through that experience. So I'm just kind of curious to get your inputs on what your experience is been like playing for what used to be Indiana Flight West, now the Indiana Elite Havoc team that you're going to be with if we're all lucky enough to play this year. So Madison, I'll start with you. If you just kind of take me through kind of how long you've been with that group and just tell a little bit about what that experience has been like for you.
Well, when I was younger, I've always known Dan, so like I would go to their practices and stuff for like the older girls, their AAU teams. I would highly recommend playing AAU to anyone because it really helps, like playing with players that you don't really play with very often. Just having that experience, I have loved it, and yeah, I'm just glad I did it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously something I didn't mention, but of course there can only be so many players from the same team, on an AAU team, especially if they have somebody coaching from there. So you get an opportunity to play with players from other schools that are very successful, and that's a good experience to see what other good players are doing, not just always play against them, but playing with them. Sometimes it's awfully a great way to learn from them. You talk about that a little bit, Madison?
Yeah, we have a really good AAU team, I'd say. Last season we were like 21-0 or something like that, and we had won I think we won like 4 tournaments last year. So playing with like them, I don't know, it's just different than playing high school basketball. It's just like different. I don't really know how to.
That's okay. That's all right. I will move over to Caitlin. Caitlin did the same thing. Just talk a little bit about your experience playing AAU and kind of what that's taught you and how that's helped you along your way.
It's basically what Madison said. She's kind of been with me through it all, and I've met Dan since like I was little, and I've always played with him. He's always taught me things. And once I started actually playing games like for travel ball, like I really knew that I really wanted to play. Like I love the game, and AAU was like the only thing I looked forward to, and I just really recommend it to anybody. It's amazing.
Okay, awesome. And Trinity, same to you.
So I haven't played with this team as long as they have because I moved to Paris my 6th grade year, and that's when I first played with Maddie and Kate up a year. And then my next year I played with a group of juniors when I was in 7th grade or 8th grade. And then this year I played with my own age group, and it's just a great experience. I've played with so many great group of girls, and it's it's so much fun to play with them, and it's just a different experience than high school because you're traveling, you're playing against like different competition. It's more like it's like a different experience because you have more coaches watching you and more players, and you're experiencing different types of everything.
Sure. Awesome. Okay, great. Now, last question, and I know, obviously Coach referenced it a little bit. The last question, we're kind of talk about maybe some of your goals for next year. And, I don't think it's any secret. While those that have seen you guys play or know a little bit about you know that the cupboard is certainly not bare at Paris. But I believe the people that probably don't know as much would look at it and say, yeah, they're 34-1, but look at who they lost. They lost Sarah, they lost Jenna, they lost Carrington, they lost 4 seniors that had all started for such Kelsey, also, all of them played a long time, played a lot of minutes, and they're just all these young girls that don't have any experience. They're not going to be very good next year. And I'm just kind of curious, what your goals are and what you guys are thinking and what you're hoping to accomplish next year as a team, and anything individually that you also are looking to accomplish that you want to try to make happen. So go back to Madison and let you start there.
So last season, as Dave said, it didn't really go exactly as planned at the end. So a lot of my goals are kind of based on last season as a team. One of the goals that I've had is to make it to state. I think that would be such a fun experience. But I also want to win conference again this year. And then as for myself, I want to make all conference again, and I also want to improve as a leader because I had the opportunity of having such great leaders in my first 2 years, and I want like my team to think the same about me as I thought about them. So that's another goal that I do have.
Okay, that's a great way to think, Madison. Caitlin, I'll turn it over to you on that.
As a team, I think the more we come together and play together, obviously that makes the game a lot better for everybody. And like individually, I'm mainly just focusing on next season for like my defense. Like that's kind of all I'm focusing on, and I'm still shooting and dribbling and stuff like that, but it's mainly just my defense that I'm focusing on.
Okay. Well, and obviously, again, folks that are familiar with your game and know a little bit about you know that you're good on offense. Everybody can always continue to improve, but it sounds like Coach has issued you a little bit of a challenge, and it sounds like you're more than happy to accept that and try to become a better defensive player. So that's great that you're hearing the words coming from your coach's mouth and you're trying to put them to use and be ready to do what he's asking you to do. So that's awesome. Trinity, I'll turn that back to you then now on that question.
Some of my goals for next year and the year after that with Maddie and Kate, I only have 2 more years with them, but all of us have talked about wanting to go to state and get as far as we went the years before, and just not prove people that we aren't just the people that were below the seniors this year. Prove to them that we're like even better or going to be better than them. And as a personal goals, I just want to be the role player that Jenna was last year and take after her and maybe be even better and grow as a player next year.
Okay, awesome. Then with that, just I guess a couple quick comments and then turn it over to Coach and let him kind of finish up on anything that as he sat and listened to you, he's realized, hold it, I wanted to say this. So one thing I'll just say is, first of all, obviously, last year was kind of that old adage, it's really hard to beat a really good team 3 times. And unfortunately, you were stuck in that scenario. And, while Coach certainly said that he didn't feel like the moment was too big, sometimes it seems like you see that home court advantage in a sectional can be a sometimes a blessing and sometimes it's not. I'm sure the moment wasn't too big. I'm sure the girls weren't not playing well because they're playing at home, but sometimes it's almost just a little bit more pressure playing at home in that scenario. And unfortunately didn't turn out the way that any of you had hoped. But again, because I've been lucky enough to start to learn these names and learn a little bit about them through all my contact with Dan, it was certainly fun from the outside looking in to see all the success and see you guys get on such a run and play that first game against T-Town and get that win and come back shortly after that and beat them by 15 points, I think, that second game. Again, from the outside looking in, it was pretty neat to watch, and I'm excited for you guys and for Coach to make that next step next year and show everybody that, again, that the cupboard's not bare. I mean, you guys have had a lot of experience at the AAU level and done very well, and those people that know that and are paying attention know what this team could be over the next couple of years, and it could be just as good or better than what you were. So that's my 2 cents. But again, I'll pass it over to you, Coach, and let you kind of finish off with anything else you'd like to add.
Sure. Just listening to the girls talk, it's exciting for me to get to listen to them, because with this, stay-at-home orders and things that, we just don't get that opportunity to kind of sit and talk and about goals and plans and things about next season. So it's as a coach, you sit here and it actually makes me more antsy that I have to sit at home and kind of wait for all this to unfold till we can get back on the court. Because right now, what we would be doing, we would be in the middle of our travel season, and I would be getting to watch these three and some of those other girls I mentioned from our team play on the 3 different travel teams we have. So, it solidifies for me that these girls are high character girls, and they got a lot of heart and a lot of desire to want to do and perform well at the game that they love. So I'm excited for them, and hopefully things turn around here, and we can get back to playing basketball together again, and kind of see these young ladies blossom into the players that they want to be and the players that they've looked up to, and listening to all of them. It makes me feel good about our program to hear that they are mentioning girls that have came before them. And I think if you interviewed Jenna and Kelsey and Carrington and Sarah, they would probably mention some girls that were ahead of them that they looked up to. And as a coach, that makes you feel really good about the way your program is ran, that you have girls that you can have mentor the younger ones as the game goes on. And I love Madison's answer about wanting the younger girls to look up to her at one of these days and think the same thing. And we talk about that at practices a lot. We talk about how not just the girls on our team, the younger ones, but we talk about all the time that there's girls in the stands that are the age that these girls were talking about when they were signing up for biddy ball and signing up for junior high basketball and those types of rec leagues and things like that. So these girls have a major influence, and so does any girl in high school that's in their local communities. They have an influence on girls, and it's a movement that I think is very strong right now, and it will continue to grow in the women's game. There's a lot of great role models, and I think we have 3 really good ones right here in front of us tonight.
Yep, I agree. Well, girls, again, I obviously have known your names and had the opportunity to see you play even a little bit, but my first opportunity to meet all 3 of you. So thank you for taking the time. I do enjoy the opportunity to learn about all the different kids out there, and I think you guys all have a bright future. So I appreciate everybody taking the time, and stay safe. And Dave, thanks a lot. And
Thanks, Don.
I think that's it for tonight. Everybody have a great night.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Bye.